The Great Reset, Event 201, and now letter number 32. What do all these have in common? Like you, I have a lot of questions and I seek God for answers related to what's happening around us in this world. What can His Word tell us? And if we take His admonition to watch and pray, what can we learn? Let's look at these items today. We're going to start with letter number 32, which was just released a week ago from the pen of Archbishop and Cardinal Carlo Maria Vigano. Now, he has developed a rapport with President Trump. They communicate. He was a representative to the United States in recent years. He's also an outspoken advocate against sexual abuse and pedophilia in the Catholic Church, and his notoriety precedes him. So I'm going to go ahead and read highlights from the letter. I'm going to take the letter, we're going to juice it down for the sake of time in this video. Take a look at it later, but I am going to read 50% or more of the letter. So you're going to see the highlights, but you'll see a large portion of it. So let's go ahead and jump in. So here is the open letter to President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump, published Sunday, October 25, 2020. And he says, "Allow me to address you at this hour in which the fate of the whole world is being threatened by a global conspiracy against God and humanity. A global plan called the Great Reset is underway. Its architect is a global elite," wow, this guy doesn't waste time, he gets right to it, "that wants to subdue all of humanity, imposing coercive measures with which to drastically limit individual freedoms and those of entire populations. Behind the world leaders who are the accomplices and executors of this infernal project, there are unscrupulous characters who finance the World Economic Forum and Event 201, promoting their agenda." Don't forget those words, that title, the World Economic Forum, because you see it again and again in the context we're going to look at after I finish this letter and we look at some other events happening at present. That WEF, the World Economic Forum. He continues, "The purpose of the Great Reset is the imposition of a health dictatorship," he goes on, "ensuring a universal income and canceling individual debt." So we'll talk about a health dictatorship more in a minute. It's interesting that is the strategy that this group is using. He continues, "The price of these concessions," so this is a group that's going to give you things, but they're going to expect something. It's a transaction. "The price of these concessions from the International Monetary Fund will be the renunciation of private property and adherence to a program of vaccination against COVID-19 and COVID-21 promoted by Bill Gates with the collaboration of the main pharmaceutical groups. The imposition of the vaccination will be accompanied by the requirement of a health passport and a digital ID with the consequent contact tracing of the population." How would you like a digital vaccine running in your bloodstream that allows you to be traced? Now, what's going to be propagated to you is that digital component in your bloodstream is monitoring your health, but it can have other uses as well. And we'll see that straight from Bill Gates' mouth shortly. "Those who do not accept these measures will be confined in detention camps or placed under house arrest, and all their assets will be confiscated. Mr. President, I imagine that you are already aware that in some countries the Great Reset will be activated between the end of this year and the first trimester of 2021. This isn't something anticipated for the far future. This is right on our heels, or right in front of our toes, whichever way you want to look at it. For this purpose, further lockdowns are planned, which will be officially justified by a supposed second and third wave of the pandemic. It is not surprising that the enemy is angered at being discovered just when he believes he has reached the citadel he seeks to conquer undisturbed. What is surprising, however, is that there is no one to sound the alarm. We're going to come back to that again too. Interesting words right there. Continuing, until a few months ago, it was easy to smear as conspiracy theorists those who denounced these terrible plans, which we now see being carried out down to the smallest detail. No one up until last February would have ever thought, continuing, to be an instrument of divine providence is a great responsibility for which you will certainly receive all the graces of state that you need, since they are being fervently employed for you by the many people who support you with their prayers. God bless the United States of America. Carlo Maria Vigano, the Archbishop of Oppiana. So, serious stuff. I mean, he's not just hinting at anything. This is whistleblowing through a megaphone, if you will. And not coming from your neighbor who lives in his uncle's basement and wears a tin hat. This is a person of notoriety. This is a person from the inside circle of Roman Catholicism, an established, powerful worldwide entity, calling this out. What is the efficacy? What is the context for what he is saying here? So the group he mentioned, the World Economic Forum, who are they? Well, their wiki says the WEF hosts an annual meeting at the end of January. It's in Switzerland. The meeting brings together some 3,000 business leaders, international political leaders, economists, celebrities, and journalists for up to 5 days to discuss global issues across 500 sessions. So this is a massive workshop for elite world leaders and influencers. Continuing, the World Economic Forum and its annual meeting in Davos are criticized regarding the public cost of security, the formation of a wealthy global elite without attachment to the broader societies, undemocratic decision processes, gender issues, and a lack of financial transparency. The one that caught my attention is that note about the formation of a wealthy global elite. They've already engendered that perception. So I've been putting up some pictures from their group meetings, so you've kind of got a feel for their vibe. And you may have noticed some famous faces in those photographs. And this is where it gets a little sticky because this group is up to no good. However, it's not the way you might imagine. So in the old Hollywood cowboy movies, you have the villain, right, with the black hat, and you have the good guy with the white hat. And they are polar opposites. The good guy he's like Jesus Christ in a cowboy uniform, and the bad guy is just sin itself. Life doesn't always play out that way. It's my belief that a lot of these celebrities, a lot of these world leaders, some of them may know what's going on, but some have just been engendered and love bombed into believing that this group is altruistic and it's all about love and peace and saving the world, but it's not. It's a group that is attempting to establish a one world order at the expense of your liberty, your freedom of speech, your property ownership, and other freedoms. So I'm going to continue at present though. So this is from the World Economic Forum's own website. This was published on their website on June 3 of this year, 2020, and it's still available for viewing. Every country from the United States to China must participate, and every industry from oil and gas to tech must be transformed. In short, We need a great reset of capitalism. Now, they use that word capitalism because that won't scare you. There's no capitalism about it. It's socialism and, frankly, communism in many cases when you start to look at the details of what they're proposing. They continue. This will require stronger and more effective governments. Never mind that the American economy was the strongest it's been in 49 years up until just a few months ago. The WEF wants you to ignore that and think that you need them to give you another government. They continue, we must build entirely new foundations for our economic and social systems. Okay, so this isn't tweaking capitalism. Again, this is a complete planned replacement. The words they use, entirely new foundations. This is a massive overhaul, it's not a tweak to what currently exists. So speaking of foundations, something I think would be helpful to point out at this point is I, being a Seventh-day Adventist, and anchor my faith in a particular verse in the Old Testament, in the book of Daniel, chapter 8, verse 14, which says, unto 2300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. And that word cleansed, nitzdak, is a word that can be translated restored. And so if you're an Adventist as well, you know, so this is a side note that I think Adventists will find interesting. The cornerstone of this last day Adventist movement is the restoration of a heavenly temple that Christ is restoring to take us to. Keep that in mind, and now counter that with what this new world order, because that's what the WEF is a part of, that's what they're engendering, wants as a counterpoint to that is look at your dollar bill and you will see on it a symbol. It's a pyramid, the unfinished pyramid. Whereas God is trying to restore a heavenly temple, this movement is attempting to restore and build an earthly temple. In fact, many secret societies, particularly Masons and others, will use a straight edge, which is a builder's tool, as their organization's main symbol. So what we're talking about here is a counterpoint, a complete counterfeit movement for what God is attempting to do in his heavenly sanctuary by rebuilding their own Babylon counterfeit temple society here on earth. Those of you who are an Adventist, just think about it some more. A side note for those of you who are. In fact, the New World Order has I should say, Masons, which I consider to be an entry point. It's very easy to suss that out if you do some online study. Has a motto that is important for the highest level, the 33rd degree Masons, and that motto is Order Ab Chao. And Order Ab Chao means order out of chaos. Now, what's interesting about this term, order out of chaos, well, that sounds good. Where there's chaos, they're going to bring order. That's not what it means. It doesn't mean that if chaos happens, they will provide the order to resolve it. It means that they will provide the chaos in order to create a need in you for the order that they will provide as a solution. And then you can thank them for it. But they provide both the chaos that leads you to a need for the order that they will then provide. Some of you will recognize this as what's known in psychology and economics and philosophy as the Hegelian dialectic. So at this point, some of you are watching this video going, all this talk about secret societies and people pulling political strings, and it just seems like a bunch of tinfoil hat craziness. Again, to my Adventists, I'm going to read you something from Ellen White. Talking about the end of time, Ellen White writes, "A power from beneath is working to bring about the last great scenes in the drama. Satan coming as Christ and working with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in those who are binding themselves together in secret societies." She mentions this elsewhere as well. So in the end of time, there are going to be secret societies, and Satan will be working to bind them together to support what he's doing, because ultimately he's the mastermind behind this. It's not ultimately the papacy or Black Lives Matter or Antifa or the World Economic Forum. It is a power greater than that, attempting to deceive from a multitude of angles. But secret societies are a real thing, and I'm gonna talk more in a minute about what the local impact is to you and your family. Because some people see this and go, well, then I'm just going to do my job and pay my taxes and go to church and fly under the radar. Not that easy. It's not an option. I'm going to talk about more of that in a moment. So this letter that I started out at the beginning here, reading to you, letter number 32 from Archbishop Vigano, drops on October 25, right? 5 days later. Now, he talks about the World Economic Forum. He names the Great Reset Initiative, which has been mentioned in side conversations and a little news article here or there, but hasn't really been forefront until just recently. He names this as a major initiative in his letter. He names Event 201. Now, notice what happens 5 days after he publishes this letter. On October 30, this is just a couple days ago now, Time Magazine releases its November issue. And what is it? It is an entire issue devoted to the Great Reset. Here it is. And inside the magazine, it says, the COVID-19 pandemic has provided a unique opportunity to think about the kind of future we want. Time partnered with the World Economic Forum to ask leading thinkers to share ideas for how to transform the way we live and work. We're not just looking for a vaccine for you. We're talking about ideas for how to transform the way we live and work. Can you imagine going to the doctor and you have a sprained ankle or a broken ankle for that matter, and the doctor says, how'd this happen? Oh, I tripped when I was getting out of my car, tripped on my cat. Doctor says, well, you know what we need to do is put that in a cast, and we need to transform the way you live and work. You're going to need to move to another state. We're going to get you a digital certification in your bloodstream. We're going to do X, Y, and Z. You're not going to be able to go to church from now. I mean, you'd go, what? Why does anyone need to step in and, quote, transform the way we live and work, regardless of the severity of a health issue? It leads some people, myself being one of them, to question that the whole health pandemic isn't an excuse, very possibly created by people who want to offer their own solution. We want to change your government. We want to take your freedoms, and we're going to take your religious freedom, and we're going to tell you and conform you to a brand new system that benefits us, but not necessarily you. Other people are questioning this as well. A writer, Patrick Delaney, noted about this recent Time issue. Time Magazine has devoted an entire issue to promoting an initiative called the Great Reset, referred to by one commentator as the Green New Deal on steroids, which will seek to advance socialist ideals, including the destruction of capitalism and individual rights. Yeah, that doesn't sound like something my friends and family or myself need. I want to go back to a statement that the Archbishop made about health. He noted the purpose of the Great Reset is the imposition of a health dictatorship. And then several other things are noted after that. What I find interesting, and again, this is for my Adventists, Adventists believe that what is the right arm of the gospel? The health message. It's the what? Entering wedge. And what do we see this group using here to enter their new ideologies into the world? A health message. Again, it's point to counterpoint. Complete counterfeit of everything that God attempts to do when he is working through his people. Look at something else with me. We're going to look at for more context that supports what the Archbishop is talking about in letter number 32. On October 18, 2019, what happened? October 18, 2019. This is about 3 months before the first COVID death was reported. 3 months. Here's what happened on October 18. There was a tabletop pandemic exercise. Johns Hopkins University on their website talks about it, and the reason they're having to talk about it, this is a disclaimer on Johns Hopkins website we're going to look at. The reason they put this here is because people became aware of what had happened, and they put this up here to try to disclaim any relationship to the pandemic. Look at what happened. It was called Event 201. It took place in New York, New York. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, along with the World Economic Forum, hosted this event. It was a high-level pandemic exercise. Now, what they did was they wanted to ascertain what would happen, for no reason, should a virus in the near future happen to saturate the world. What would be the fallout? And so they randomly chose, of all the thousands of viruses they could have chosen, they chose the coronavirus for this pandemic exercise. And they chose a handful of countries and cities, one of which they chose just happened to be Wuhan, China. And they ran this pandemic exercise. It was secretive, and then people found out, and so Johns Hopkins comes up with this disclaimer. In October 2019, the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security hosted a pandemic tabletop exercise called Event 201 with partners, the World Economic Forum, and of course, because they always show up in the last year when things like this happen, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. For the scenario, we modeled a fictional coronavirus pandemic. So don't use your minds, friends and family and countrymen. This has no relation to what started happening 3 months later, even though the same virus was tabletopped in this exercise from the same city and country. Absolutely outrageous. And sure enough, 3 months later, on January 11, the first known death was reported by the Chinese state related to coronavirus. I have a friend whose daughter works in the COVID unit here in New Mexico, United States, where I live, and she was being let go every day because they didn't have any COVID victims coming to the hospital, even though our local news is saying that it's a war zone at our own hospitals. So I thought, I wonder if the same ruse is happening with New York. So I'm not the first one that asked that question. You can Google and you'll see that some people like Todd Starnes and others set up cameras outside major New York hospitals, and there's just no traffic coming and going. It's just, you just wait for a tumbleweed to roll by. But I did some research, and I'm going to put the links up here. There are 214 hospitals in New York State. And at the end of March, at the height of what's considered the war zone period, the COVID death toll in New York reported 1,000 deaths. That's 5 deaths per hospital in New York. Okay, that is saddening, but that is not a war zone dynamic. Let's be honest here. Bill Gates continued to speak and share about this pandemic. Now, my take is that Bill Gates is the liaison on behalf of the World Economic Forum to the United States, if not the whole world. He's the face, and what a great face they've chosen. I mean, the guy is so affable. He's so friendly. He kind of reminds me of almost like a Mr. Rogers type figure. He appears in those powder blue sweaters, and he's just very friendly and conversational, and great spokesman for a group that has hidden agendas. And in a TED interview, he said, eventually what we'll have to have is certificates of who's a recovered person, who is a vaccinated person. So eventually there will be this digital immunity proof that will help facilitate the global reopening up. If that's the case, think about people, use your critical thinking. Think about the impacts of a world where You have to have this digital certificate in your body to what? Be able to travel, and then what? To be able to buy and sell, and then what? To be able to go to church and worship freely. Yeah, maybe all those things won't happen immediately, but it opens a door where they can. Your freedom is now controlled through a vaccine. And he made other statements. Bill Gates calls for national tracking system for coronavirus, going back to his digital vaccination. Forbes magazine. Wow. Another item I want to transition to here is the Archbishop made this comment in his open letter, and this is particularly pertinent. He said, "What is surprising, however, is that there is no one to sound the alarm. Few, if any, people have been sounding the alarm." I want to throw a shout out to Ivor Myers. I want to throw a shout out to Walter Veith. I want to share a shout out to Steve Wohlberg. There are people who risk their ministries by making statements that are considered unorthodox, or worse, they're called conspiracy theorists. But praise God, there are a few who do, because that's what we are supposed to be doing. There seems to be this belief system at present that if it doesn't have to do with the beast in Revelation 14, here is our one single villain, then just ignore it. God will take care of the rest. No, any organization that works against your freedom and your liberty is dangerous. And that's why Christ never told his disciples, just pray. Jesus said, watch and pray. It's part of our role is to watch and to share with our family members, to alert our children to what's going on, and friends, and find opportunities. Pray that the Holy Spirit gives us opportunities to share in season, but those seasons should be happening. That sharing should be happening. Use your social media, use your Facebook, use your relationships to try to find opportunities to alert people you care about to what's happening. I'm also reminded of, and I'm going to close looking at this, a verse in the Bible, and it's Ezekiel chapter 33, verses 1 to 6. Again, the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, speak to the children of your people, and say to them, when I bring the sword upon a land, and the people of the land take a man from their territory and make him their watchman, when he sees the sword coming upon the land, if he blows the trumpet and warns the people, then whoever hears the sound of the trumpet and does not take warning, if the sword comes and takes him away, his blood shall be on his own head. He heard the sound of the trumpet, but did not take warning. His blood shall be upon himself. And then this transition. But he who takes warning will save his life. But if the watchman sees the sword coming and does not blow the trumpet, and the people are not warned, and the sword comes and takes any person from among them, he is taken away in his iniquity, but his blood I will require at the watchman's hand. You and I are the watchmen. We are watchmen in our home, whether you're a father or a mother. We are the watchmen in our relationships with our friends. We're the watchmen in our workplace. We're the watchmen on social media. You cannot compartmentalize your identity as a watchman from all of the other parts of your world. You are the watchman who has been put in those people's lives to protect them and warn them and to watch and pray for them, but also watch and let them know if you see danger and if you see compromise and concerning events happening around us. And yet, none of us want to be that relative who's constantly annoying your family and friends with this fanatical, constant obsession with conspiracy theories. No, don't be that guy. But there needs to be a time and a place. Let's each pray that God show us what that time and a place is so that we can speak out and share to the ones we love and care about, and also pray and ask God to give us wisdom for what to do now in such a time as this.